All right, as you have come on to our session today, if you will please in the chat box answer the couple of questions that are posted before you. What do you expect to gain? What are you looking forward to? And in the meantime, we will keep moving forward and tap into the why of today's session. So, why are we actually here today? What's our purpose? In celebration of National Career Development Month, Career and Employment Resources is beyond excited to host today's session, Full Steam Ahead. I am Laura Bethay with the department, and I am thrilled to be a representative for our session today. We have a dynamic panel of STEM professionals ready to connect with us. So let's get started. First, let's meet our session's moderator, Coren Townsend. Coren is a senior application developer at Red Hat, where she focuses on supporting, administering, and developing training guidance for the Walk Me project. She has been with Red Hat for over 8 years. Coren is a technology industry veteran with a combined 20 years of quality assurance and application development experience, ranging from small startups to the leading software company in open source technologies. And we know that as Red Hat. She helped to revamp the entire redhat.com website, implement a content management tool to support the site, and helped to deploy the learning management system, the LMS, to several countries around the world. Most recently, she has been working on the digital adoption team to develop WalkMe implementations for Red Hat tools and products. After completing her undergraduate and graduate studies at NC State University, go Wolfpack, right? She started her career as a software developer and then moved into quality assurance, where she became a team lead and managed offshore team members. She then recently moved her career into digital adoption industry with WalkMe. Coren actively promotes diversity within IT and engineering fields. She is a founding member on the leadership team of Red Hat's diversity and inclusion committees, vice chair of the Blacks United in Leadership and Diversity, known as BUILD, and the past co-chair of the Women's Leadership Community IT chapter. She currently serves as the leadership team for VP of Membership with Red Hat's Toastmasters chapter, known as Open Voices. Wow, we truly have an expert at the table. Thank you for your service today, Coren, and I am now turning the session over to you. Please
Thank,
take it away.
thank you, Laura. I appreciate that. And I don't say I'm an expert, but I appreciate the compliment. I'm still learning, and I will continuously be learning for the rest of my life. So thank you very much for that. I do thank you, and I thank you everyone for joining and coming and listening to this session. We hope that you do get some great input for your students. I see the comments in the chat about that, and I hope there are some students on board as well who can now benefit from this knowledge that these esteemed panelists will provide. So I want to first introduce Dominic Ali. Dominic is a native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He served as a faculty member in the chemistry department. He served, sorry, as the faculty member in the chemistry department at Waytech for the past 3 years. Through his passion, he has also been able to serve as both the STEM Day coordinator and a C-STEP advisor with UNC Chapel Hill. He graduated from Penn State University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in chemistry focused on biophysical chemistry projects. Most notably, he earned 3 research grants and presented his research at the 2015 ACS National Conference in Denver, Colorado. During his time, he also served as the Science Student Representative for the Academic and Career Planning Center and an intern for a plastics engineering firm in Brascom, America. After his time at Penn State, his passion and enthusiasm for sciences led him to pursue his graduate degree at North Carolina State University, go Wolfpack, specializing in bioorganic and medicinal chemistry projects. Within this 1.5 year tenure, he obtained his master's degree as well as earned 2 teaching certificates and an Excellence in Teaching Award. Thank you, Dominic, for being on the panel today. We appreciate you providing some insight for our students. Next up, I have Christine Daniels, PhD. Dr. Daniels is a postdoctoral scholar at Duke University's Human Vaccine Institute with a research focus on the development of a novel HIV nanoparticle-based vaccine candidate. That is a mouthful. Thank you. Her research interests include immune-based therapeutics and cancer biology. Dr. Daniels received her PhD in molecular cancer biology from Duke University. Prior to pursuing her graduate degree, she completed a postdoctoral program at the University of Michigan. Dr. Daniels holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in anthropology with a concentration in human biology and a minor in global health from Emory University. Thank you, Dr. Daniels, for being with us today. Next up, I have Al Leaston. Mr. Leaston is the current director of the Network Management Program at Wake Technical Community College. Prior to starting a full-time career in academia, he worked as a network engineer for 15 years. And over those 15 years, he worked at various IT companies, including IBM, Cisco, Systems, and Extreme Networks. While working in the networking industry, he also taught as an adjunct professor, teaching networking classes at Southern New Hampshire University, Colorado State University, and St. Augustine's University here in Raleigh, North Carolina. He presently serves as the Social Equity Ambassador for the RTP chapter of the National Society of Black Engineers, also known as NSBE. Thank you, Mr. Leaston, for joining us today. Up next, we have Josh Merrick. Mr. Merrick is currently a research technician with the Duke Human Vaccine Institute at Duke University. He obtained his bachelor's degree in biology with a concentration in molecular and cellular biology and a minor in genetics also from NC State University. Josh is also a Wake Tech graduate receiving the Associate of Science College Transfer degree. He currently is planning to pursue his PhD in genetics with intentions to eventually become a professor or to run his own research lab. Thank you, Mr. Merrick, for being with us today as well. Awesome. So we have a very well-rounded panel, and we have several questions we're going to go through today, and we hope that everyone receives some good knowledge and some good ways to maybe influence your own personal careers. So we're going to open this up to everyone on the panel. We want to know, how did you get into your field and industry, and why do you stay? Like, what gives you energy to do what you do every day? And we'll start with Mr. Ali.
All right. Well, I just wanted to start out and tell Laura and Corinne, thank you very much for setting up today. This is, I think, out of a year of a lot of different STEM discoveries as the positive side to what will come out of this year. Really positive influences that I hope that will come for the students' knowledge and for everybody else, that will affect every student that really affects within the STEM fields over the next coming years. And I think that a lot of where my start in the STEM fields has really kind of grown has come from high school. And I actually had the privilege of a high school program that had a lot of influences for the chemistry side of things, specifying in a lot of the different avenues and the people involved within that. And it really came from a very finite way of explaining that I saw a lot of cool things happening in the chem labs when I would pass by, and I really wanted to understand just how things behaved, how to control things, if you will, from a younger side of that persona, as well as also trying to figure out how I can just better off understand how this will influence the world around us. And in particular with chemistry, this was one of the topics that spoke to me more personally out of all of that, to explain how behaviors of the world, behaviors of not only biological things, but non-biological things could be manipulated. And it really took into that foundation of just a drive to say, I need to take at least one of these classes to be able to figure out whether or not this is something that I truly feel as passionate about as I did at the time. And at the time, I was a sophomore in high school, and I immediately went into my guidance counselor's office. But at the time, chemistry was not necessarily a sophomore level course. It was technically a junior level course. However, it was an elective. And as much as I was signed up for my biology courses, in my head, I thought, what a perfect combination to be able to not only inspect everything that I got curious about as I passed it through the halls, but in particular, I wanted to be able to have both kind of help each other. At least I thought that that's what would be the case. I went into my guidance counselor's office, and in particular, she was not as, I guess, driven to have the same idea for me as I had for myself. I immediately went home, and one of these aspects of communication and collaboration, I talked with my parents who have absolutely no STEM background whatsoever. And I said that this is something that I feel as though I need to pursue in some way, shape, or form. At this time, I can't really explain it, but I do know that that is a class I have, and they gave me full support. I took my first class in that sophomore year and ultimately ended up taking that bio and chemistry class, as well as then moving into AP chemistry and organic chemistry in my junior year, and finishing off with human anatomy and physics in my senior year. And it was a pathway that started just an entire drive and dedication to something that just never stopped giving me passion in my life. And with any of those types of passions and enthusiasm that you have with a subject, especially within the STEM field, there is never an end to questions. That is where the STEM field really kind of takes fostering in a lot of the students' mentalities, and especially my own. You have to be driven in having somebody present to kind of lead you through that. So as much as I got a little bit of drawback from my guidance counselor, immediately when I went into my chemistry class, I found two people in particular as mentors that guided me through not only high school, but I still find them to be as great of mentors as I do today. And I can tell that they are lifelong friends from that community, collaboration, and communication that we all just share for the love of the STEM fields.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thank goodness you went further than your guidance counselor and kept pursuing it. So that's awesome to hear. That is very awesome. Dr. Daniels, how did you get started in your field, and what kind of drives you to stay in doing what you do every day?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for having me as a participant on the panel. And I can definitely echo a lot of what Dominic was saying about being discouraged or having a lot of points in my pathway in which I could have turned or could have given up. So it's definitely, perseverance is definitely a part of my story. But as far as how I got into STEM, I've always generally been interested in science, but it wasn't something that I would have admitted out loud, definitely not in high school. Probably not until I think college was when I felt more comfortable embracing the fact that I like science. In particular, my intro bio course was really pivotal, as well as a couple other experiences I had. But my intro to bio course had a heavy focus on cancer biology, and so we used cancer throughout the semester as a framework for driving home complicated concepts and illustrating application of the materials that we were learning. And so for me, this has felt more relatable, especially coming from high school science, where I felt that a lot of it was like memorize the photosynthesis pathway for a test. Learning about an actual disease application just kind of felt more real to me, not to diminish, basic science or any of those other types of biological questions, but for me, it's like having a disease focus to compel me it just engages me more. Particularly with cancer, during the time I was taking Intro to Bio, I had several close relatives that were battling cancer. So for me, I really just latched on to the opportunity to learn more about the course of the disease, the mechanisms, like what they were experiencing, and just trying to understand that on a mechanistic level. And so it was really great because I was able to engage my family members into these conversations. So a lot of times when you interface with doctors and you have they'll give you like a regimen or a prognosis, and they'll tell you take these medicines, but they don't actually tell you what those medicines are doing in your body. And so for me, it was really valuable to try to learn about the different pathways these medicines were targeting and how they were, how people were attempting to fight cancer and make people feel better. Um, Unfortunately, having relatives that had cancer and learning about it, I came to realize that, at least for my relatives in particular, one of them, it felt that the treatments, particular treatments like such as chemo, seemed to make him feel worse than the actual disease burden itself, and that just never felt right with me. For a particular example is that my dad likes to go off of chemo for holidays just because he doesn't, it makes him feel so lethargic and weak and just really takes a physical toll on his body. I mean, he's really sick when he's undergoing chemo. And so while I would never encourage anyone to like go against the orders of their doctor and pause treatment, it's just something he does. And he's been doing it for years. And when he's off his treatment, when he's not doing chemo, he's just a completely different person. I mean, he's full of life. He seems healthier. It's almost like he's not sick at all. And so, that's, I wouldn't encourage anyone to do that. But for me, it just left me with a question of like, is this the best possible treatment option that we can offer people? Something that makes them this sick and this, that diminishes their quality of life so much. I just never, that never felt right with me. And learning about the pathways involved in cancer development and progression through bio, it just gave me all of these ideas about different things we could target and learning about different strategies scientists and researchers were pursuing to try to combat the disease from a molecular basis. And that just really spoke to me. That was probably one of the earlier pivotal experiences. Later in my college career, undergrad, I participated in a summer research program at the University of Chicago. And that was probably like, I think that really, really was the final push in terms of encouraging me to pursue a PhD as opposed to an MD. That and biochem. I just hated biochem, didn't do well in biochem. That also was a determining factor. But the research experience in Chicago not only got my hands wet in terms of like allowing me to work at the bench and get research experience, but I did research through a program that was really immersive. So I got to meet meet graduate students and talk to professors and actually see what it looked like to be in grad school, because I didn't know anyone who had taken this path. Everyone I knew who liked science went to medical school. Like that's just what people do. So just being able to talk to people and really see what it looked like, I was able to envision myself in this space and to see it as a means to trying to answer some of the questions I was interested in. So that's how I got started, and I stay in it because I just feel personally invested. I think that there should be better treatment options available than just blasting the body with radiation or chemicals that are harmful and toxic. So that's why I do it.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Dan. That's awesome. We thank all of the people who have a passion for, especially the type of work that you're doing for medical science. I think that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that in your story. Mr. Leaston, how did you get into your field? We're completely kind of a different area, industry, and how, what keeps you there? What kind of drives you every day?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, Coren and Laura. So for me, I didn't mention it, but I'm an NC State graduate as well. I didn't mention that in my bio, but go Pack. But that's when really it was my junior year at NC State in a liberal arts discipline. I was in a communications major, oddly enough, and I took a semester off to really reflect on school and what I wanted to do, because I think I was in college really as the next natural step, because I knew I was going to college. I was in a degree program, but I was like, hey, what do I really want to do? So I had taken some time off and really had almost stumbled into the IT field, really, and talking to people. I think at that point in my life, I wanted to graduate, but I was looking for economic stability immediately after graduation, right? And I kept thinking to myself, am I going to have the stability that I want in a communications degree, or will I need to go to grad school and keep going? Am I looking at 4 or 5 years down the road? And oddly enough, I was talking to a few friends and they said, you know what? You can obtain an IT certification in possibly, in a couple months and get a pretty good job. And I actually had a couple friends who worked at companies in RTP, pretty prestigious companies, and did really well. And I was like, you know what, that might be an idea. So that semester I stayed out of school, I actually took a couple of nights in IT. I said, hey, I'm going to try this IT thing out and see what happens. And, I eventually got into networking. That's the thing that really gravitated to me, networking. I was passionate about it, looking at the network diagrams, topologies. It really resonated with me. And I was like, you know what? This is exciting. This is really good stuff. And I was able to actually obtain a networking certificate. And oddly enough, went on to get a job. My first job was at IBM. And this is as a junior at NC State. And, had a passion and love for networking and networking technology. And then while I was working at IBM, I kind of went back to graduate to actually finish out my communications degree. But then I was like, you know what? I'm in the field now, so I'll probably need to get a master's in information systems. So I went on to get a master's in IS just to kind of solidify the things I was learning at the time. So really, for me, it was looking for economic stability and I found it in STEM, and I found something I really liked, in network engineering. And I guess it's funny, the second part of the question is, why'd you stay in it? So I'm no longer a network engineer. I'm actually a director at Wake Tech, and I enjoy it a great deal. But I think for me, and what really drew me to education and just the STEM field, I always tell people I'm the TE of STEM. I'm kind of right in the middle there, the technology and engineering. So for me, having gone down that path, having been in the field for 15 years, understanding the industry, I take a lot of pride in trying to relay and explain that to students, right? Try to be that mentor that I wish I had, kind of stumbling through the field and understanding things and try to figure things out. As I did get in the field, I did have mentors who were a great aid in kind of helping me matriculate that field and kind of get through there. But that's one thing that a lot of students I wish they would look for are those mentors, and that's kind of how I ended up in the field of STEM.
Nice. Yes, it's amazing what mentorship and actually talking to people about your path could do as far as just advice. But yeah, that's an awesome story. Thank you for sharing. Mr. Merrick, can you share with us kind of how you got into your field and what keeps you in your field?
Yeah, sure thing. And again, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I'd say probably I started in my field in high school, but I was kind of torn between two fields. It was between art, of all things, I was kind of surprised, and going into a more STEM-based and scientific career. During my time in high school, I pursued art a lot, probably more heavily than my science background or science interests. And that went on until I took my first art level or college level art class and realized that maybe art wasn't for me and I should pursue some of my other interests. But at that time, I had already been accepted to UNC Greensboro, which I had gone more for a art reasoning, but decided maybe I should look into STEM fields, and somehow landed on thinking I wanted to go for physics. And while I did really enjoy that initially and was under the impression that I wanted to go into engineering, that lasted up until some of the higher math classes, and I was not doing quite as well as I'd hoped, and I realized, okay, maybe I need to take a step back, reevaluate what it is that I wanted to do. So similar to Mr. Leeson, I did take some time off, took a step back from college, decided to reevaluate my choices. I knew I wanted to be in STEM, but I wasn't really sure where. So taking the time off really helped, and that kind of directed me more towards biology. And once I landed at that decision, I got into Wake Tech, and it kind of acted as a restart for me for my college career. It was really easy to get off the ground running at Wake Tech. I had a lot of support. Having some college background already, there were a lot of professors at Wake Tech that were willing to help me out. And probably the biggest driving force that kept me going towards biology and STEM was both the Wake Tech Biology Club and a professor, Aaron Dugney, at Wake Tech. So being a part of the biology club, I was able to learn more about what Wake Tech offered as far as biology courses and network a little. And that's how I did meet Miss Dugney and learned about some research experience at Wake Tech involving genetics and biology. And I was a little bit interested in research, didn't exactly know if that was the route I wanted to take, but I thought, you know what, why not give it a shot? It sounds like I might like it. And I got into that one semester and haven't looked back since. I fell in love with research. I just dove right into it. And after doing that project at Wake Tech, I ended up transferring to NC State. And during my time there, I actually got to do my own research. And that's really what solidified that biology was where I wanted to be. And being a part of a research field is somewhere where I can push the boundaries of knowledge and try and learn more than what there is out there is really what's kept me connected. And just that curiosity and excitement of the unknown is what really makes me want to stay in this field.
Nice. Yes, that's awesome. Thank you for your curiosity, because research is what kind of makes the world go around. It's how we innovate and think of new ideas and be creative. So thank you for sharing your stories. I appreciate that. So we're going to kind of go into a couple of questions, and anybody can chime in how they see fit. So think back, way back, when you're coming out of school, right? You're newly trying to figure it out and figure out what kind of areas you wanted to go in. What practical advice would you give a student that's just coming out of school? They're looking for a job, or, they're trying to figure out which career direction to go in. Anything that you could think that you would tell your younger self, you should do this because it's going to happen this way, or it's not going to happen this way.
So coming out of undergrad, looking for a job, one thing I would say, network. Your network is everything. And I mean, the people I know who have really good jobs are in general, it makes the process so much easier. It's not to say that your merit and your hard work aren't enough to get you a job, but there's so many other barriers that go in between the interview and actually the hiring process. And so having a person, talking to a person, making a connection at a company, finding someone who's willing to vouch for you or to give you insider tips like, hey, there's a position that's going to open, here, you should apply, or they're looking for this, or, or just someone to push your resume to the front of the pile. Things like that can really help. And leveraging communities that you're a part of to try to identify people is a great way. So looking through the alumni directory of institutions you've attended and trying to find people who do things that you're interested in. Reaching out to those people, a cold email. If you have something in common with somebody, they're much more likely to respond. So saying, hey, I see you went to Wake Tech. I see you went to NC State. I'm interested in this. People love to talk about themselves. Two, I would say informational interviews, because coming out of undergrad, what I ended up doing versus what I thought I was going to do are very, very different things. And part of that is just how much you know. You don't know what you don't know. And so talking to people and finding out what other options are available, because the people who've trained you, they chose that path. And so they know how to train people to do that path. But if you're interested in something else, they might not necessarily be poised to train you to do that because they don't know. And so, don't limit yourself to just what you've seen. Actually, reach out and talk to people who do things that are very different from what you think you want to do, things that align with what you want to do, and just kind of get a feel for what these career paths look like. So I would definitely say network, informational interview, buy people coffee if you do. They love that post-COVID. But yeah, I would highly encourage you to do that. People are much more, if you're worried about meeting in person, you can call or Skype or Zoom. Yeah, but definitely network.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Networking is vital. One thing I didn't have 20 years ago when I finished college was LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a perfect tool to meet people from all over the world who may be interested or doing things that you're interested in long term, and just connect. You know, yeah, before we had to actually leave the house and talk to people, and now you can just connect on LinkedIn and meet several people. So I think networking is vital to career, and not just once you're starting out, but when, you know, even though you're established. It is get used to talking to people. That's a skill that, you know, never gets old. Anybody else wanna anything? Any other words of wisdom from your younger, fresh out of school self?
Yeah, I'll bank off of what Christine mentioned there too, because as much as, networking as the big topic, there was a lot of things that she mentioned in there that I think needs to be pointed out. One of which, obviously, within the networking aspect is you got to find a mentor. I mentioned it in my previous aspect to it, but finding a mentor with the networking aspect translates to another aspect of the advice of understanding transferable skills. It's not just knowing what those transferable skills are or pinpointing one at a time. You have to be able, as a STEM professional, to kind of live within the gray area of all aspects of science. As a chemist, it's not just chemicals. And, a lot of times when I do get students in to the more general sides, they're focused on, I want some things that go and explode in our faces and make fireballs and do fun things, and it's not that. There's aspects to control and safely administer things in different environments, and the connection and competency to understanding those transferable skills is reliant on the mentor. And it's a relationship, just like any other relationship that you want to have in your life. These should be lifelong people, and some may come and go, and that might be kind of the unfortunate side if they do go, but that you're growing beyond where you're at that point. And that's where staying humble to who that person is, who yourself is, and especially through students. I now starting to see it from the other side of the scenario, especially here now at Wake Tech for 3 years. But when students want a 100% A plus perfect assignment exam score, in reality, that's kind of not really doing anybody any favors. Either you're not being tested well enough, or you're not necessarily maybe doing every single thing that you could be doing to achieve what that 100% represents. And I tell for a lot of students, when they might have that kind of perfection moment, I say, okay, here's your next task. You got to be able to do something different and achieve more. And if you don't find yourself as a student or somebody who's advising the students to go after something more, then the students need to find a new room. They need to find a new mentor. They need to find somebody else who will grow them. And I think that translates to a lot of specific numbers. I know from a STEM person, I love numbers, as well as I think most STEM people do. But some numbers that I've always kind of held with me. But roughly about 27% of college grads in a career currently are related to what their major is. And I think that speaks volumes, especially to the job market in which we are at right now. This is a time where it is about economic stability. 100% that is a reliance in this world. But we want to go after something that's also going to provide us both the passion and the economic stability, just as John mentioned before. Roughly about 80% of college students change their major at least one time. Personally, I've never had that experience personally, but I will say I did go for a second graduate degree. And again, from a mentor and from staying humble and trying to grow, I went from a very physics-oriented undergraduate degree to a very organic and biological graduate degree, because I wanted to understand something new, try to figure out how things connected on a bigger and more complex level. And that was with advice. I took it, and I 100% thank that advice, because it has provided so much more influence behind how I think that 80% of the college students, I think, do kind of market that. I think, Josh, you mentioned that as well, of just kind of going through that that influence. And even still, when you take a look at all the STEM degrees, I can only talk more specifically to chemistry, but the majority of STEM majors do pursue graduate school, and that number for chemistry side is 37% being the majority. And that is truly for those benefits of trying to relate to that future growth and that future employment, that future income, that future growth possibility. And a lot of numbers that reflect that, I think, is all based upon how students are sacrificing the STEM perspective in their undergraduate and their mentorship and trying to play all these different scenarios out in just 4 years. So it has a lot of different transferable aspects that need to come together. And I think all of that stems from exactly through networking as the overarching theme.
Yeah, I highly agree. Thank you for that, Mr. Ali. Mr. Leeson, in your profession, because you're kind of on the kind of computer side of the industry, like used to be anyway, now you're in the educational field, but like, how do you feel as a community we, like the, corporate America can help, facilitate more of these careers for STEM and encourage those among students?
Thanks. That's a good point. Overall, I think, STEM starts, or interest in STEM starts at a really young age. Like I think two big keys is STEM awareness and STEM exposure. You can't have enough of those, because I think Dr. Daniels hit on it earlier, saying sometimes you might have to try things that you don't like, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? So you have to be exposed to various STEM disciplines to see, hey, I like this, or I know I don't want to do that. Right. So I think early exposure, anything, as a community, if we can get our young students exposed to various STEM disciplines. I know actually, Coren, you're big on that because we have worked a few STEM camps and been involved in a couple of STEM camps during the summer. So I'm all for that. One thing, like, I know just from my experience, like coding camps and robotic camps, things like that. So a lot of people don't think about this, but, maybe you don't grow up to be a coder. Maybe you don't get into robotics, but the critical thinking skills you've developed doing that now helps you in mathematics, right? So it's like if we can get you to think a certain way, even if you don't do that, you've learned a skill, right? You learn to critically think at things. And I'm not going to be a coder, but you know what? I'm better at math now. You know what I mean? So getting that early exposure, I think really helps out. And I just resonate with everybody else was saying about mentors and networking, because I know I'll never forget it. My first mentor in the IT field, he told me that, people learn through mentors and mistakes. And I was like, well, I don't want to make a lot of mistakes. And he was like, well, get you a mentor. Right. And that always resonated with me. Right. He was like, that's the two-way people learn, is through mentors and mistakes. Like once you make a mistake in something, okay, hey, I'm not going to do it that way. And you kind of go on and kind of reinvent yourself, or you find a mentor who might have made those mistakes and can tell you from their experience. And when he told me that, that resonated with me from a really early age. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to make it my business to have mentors instead of kind of stumbling through and making this on my own. I think also as from a community perspective, we need role models. I think we just need to have more people, especially corporations and for students, and to see people in STEM, to kind of know what that looks like. I know, speaking from like a socioeconomic perspective, and really reaching some of those areas who don't see STEM professionals in their area, in their environment where they live, right? How can you want to be a network engineer? How can you want to be a chemist if I've never seen a chemist before, right? I have no idea what a chemist looks like or what they do. Nobody in my general population or my immediate surroundings are chemists or network engineers. So that's something I've never thought about. So again, that kind of goes back to that exposure, kind of goes back to, really having role models or kind of mentors, going back into the community. One thing, especially about this area and being kind of naive to it, I haven't actually grown up in this area and worked in Research Triangle Park for 15 years. So I've worked at IBM, I've worked at GlaxoSmithKline, I've worked at these large companies, and I always felt that this is a great area for STEM, which it is, but I don't know how well it is for like economic mobility, right? For people who don't have exposure to those fields, are they being introduced, and are they able to go to NC State? Are they able to get what the data is showing that usually if you come from a middle class family or a middle class socioeconomic status, then you'll probably go to universities. You'll probably end up with those jobs. But if you come from a lower economic status, you're never exposed to that, right? So you have all these great resources, these great colleges around you, and it's almost like a foreign world to you because you've never been exposed to it. So I think from a community perspective, really just getting people who might not be exposed to STEM a lot more exposure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yes, we have worked together on some STEM camps over the summer because I know the influence at a young age can definitely provide more guidance for a child as they get older. I mean, I was influenced at a young age, which I know was a direct influence on why I chose my career path. So yeah, I thank you for that, and I look forward to all your great posts on LinkedIn, and for everybody out there, connect with everybody here on LinkedIn in some way because we are all posting great things. I know Mr. Lisa, you post a lot of things about some of the programs that you're doing. So I can't emphasize enough how much LinkedIn has definitely helped with my career and can help with all the students out there as well. Mr. Merrick, I want to come back to you for a second. What are some things in your career, in your path that have been defining moments? Like, that mistake that you might have made and say, oh, I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to go this way. Anything that really stood out for you?
Yeah, sure. And I'd also like to go back and agree with everyone else that yes, networking is a very big part of the STEM field. I know I wouldn't have gotten where I am today if it weren't for a lot of my mentors and the people I met along the way. Also, about making mistakes, please don't get discouraged. You're going to make mistakes going through it. I made plenty of them getting through it and somehow got on the other end. So it's going to happen. Don't worry, you'll get through it. As far as a specific defining moment in my career, though, I have to say, once I got to NC State and was I met one of my mentors, Dr. Gordy, and I just pretty much opened up to her one day, told her what I was interested in, and she was like, hey, if you want to do independent research, I'll support you. And after already experiencing a little bit of research at Wake Tech, that just made me so excited. I was all like giddy, and I'm like, sure, I would love to do my own project. I don't really know what it entails, but it sounds cool. Let's go for it. Boy, was I in for a surprise. Had to write my own grant proposals, had to do all kinds of research proposals, and like do my own papers and publications, find funding, like a whole ordeal. And it was challenging. It was very challenging. And my mentor, Dr. Gordy, she wasn't very familiar with the direction of research I wanted to go into, but she was always willing to help, and she always knew someone, going back to networking, that I could talk to. So I'd have to say that was probably the biggest defining moment in my career that solidified the fact that I wanted to go into research. I mean, I even liked writing a grant proposal, which is something that most people don't like. But just like how difficult it was, the struggles it was, and getting through all of it and getting to the end and being able to say, like, I built this project from the ground up was just so inspiring to me and was what really made me want to be where I am now.
Nice. Yeah. So you took that a chance, right? It stepped out there, did something out of your comfort zone, and it paid off to a very flourishing career, which is, taking those risks, right? Internships. Go get a position in a company you think you might like and see if it works out. I think that was probably one of the biggest things that I've done as an undergrad was to take internships or work on a project for a professor, talking to a professor or talking to someone in industry to see, well, maybe I might like this. I went into NC State as a math major. Actually came in as undeclared because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Came in and my advisor said, hey, you're really good at math. Why don't you become a math major? I didn't even know that was an option. And so I signed up and I ended up loving it. Now, when I finished my undergrad, I didn't know what I wanted to do with being a math major. I was like, well, I could work at a bank or I could sell insurance or I could be a math teacher. And I didn't want to do any of those. So undergrad, I did more of computer science and development and got into more of the development side and ended up loving it. And that's where I've kind of been over the last 20 years. So you never know if you just take that opportunity and that chance to do something that you're not sure if you like, but it ends up paying off in the end. So that's awesome. I'm great to hear everybody kind of stepped out there and just took chance and take risks and mentors versus mistakes. I love that, Mr. Leeson. So one thing I know, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. I know there's a lot of emphasis on like internships, and I definitely agree. It's great. They can be competitive, and so I don't want people to rule out other ways to gain internships. Internships are great, and if you can get them, definitely apply. Definitely do a bunch of them. I took advantage for sure, but there are other ways to get experience. For instance, if you're in a specific field, knowing the organizations that are associated with that field, such as NSBE or Biotech Triangle Park, like getting involved in those groups. A lot of times they have positions within those chapters that you can kind of leverage. So, being the treasurer of your local chapter or just taking on some type of leadership role is another way to get experience and then transfer the skills you learn from that role and to leverage them into other opportunities. So don't just think because something doesn't have the term internship attached to it that you can't use it for the same purpose as you would an internship.
I highly agreed. Volunteer opportunities in an organization or a nonprofit where you can gain these leadership skills. One question I was going to ask you all is just, I know we're very much about STEM, right? It's a matter of fact, it is or is not, but like soft skills, learning how to speak in front of people, learning how to write a grant, right? That's not something that you necessarily do in college, but what are some things that you can provide for students that are, soft skills, like, writing an email or, talking to an executive of the company, like anything that you've experienced that you might have had in those areas. Anybody can chime in.
I'll maybe start with this one. If there is, kind of going back to transferable skills using, the aspect of not just at a time, I think soft skills is a good example to one of those aspects that we always hear about. Like you said, it could be writing, it could be communication, and I think from a society standpoint, we do have a lot of the opinions that come from a lot of people that say these things. But for students, I think for a lot of times, and especially now, if it is not a mentor or like, again, what John mentioned of having that mistakes that you're learning from somebody, the educational process of the soft skills is sometimes what we need to do the most help in at times. And one aspect I tell for a lot of my students, even
Uh-oh. I think we lost Mr. Ali. Can y'all hear me? Uh-oh. I think Mr. Ali's video locked up. Well, while he gets that straight, anybody else want to chime in any soft skills that you've learned over the years, the easy way or the hard way?
I can kind of chime in. I know we've talked about kind of going. I think everybody here, had to make decisions going back and forth. As they kind of went through school and tried to figure out what they do. And that's probably the one thing I did get right from an early age. When I first entered NC State, I went into communications because I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. But what I had realized is, regardless of what I'm going to do, I'm going to need to be able to communicate. And that's the only thing I knew. That was my basis of going into communications. I was like, I don't care what I'm going to do. If I'm well spoken, if I'm able to communicate with people, my chance will be better in that industry, right? And that's the one thing as much as I've kind of made my way through, that's the one thing I think I've gotten right. And even in information technology, we've been hitting on it. I don't think you can overemphasize soft skills simply because what we keep talking about is networking and being able to communicate with people and being able to find mentors. And that does take a bit of having those soft skills, having the ability to communicate with people, whether that's interpersonally, whether that's personally, as you suggested, whether that's via email or however, those are skills that can't really be underestimated. And one thing really quick, Korean, I don't know if anybody else has noticed it, but that red hat, was that strategically placed there on the door? I'm just being an IT person. I see a little red hat back there, and it makes me laugh every time.
So when you work at Red Hat, everybody gets a red fedora. So the company provided that for all full-time employees, and so it's the thing that we do is to post it somewhere in your video, so everybody can see it. So that's just that's a Red Hat thing.
That you see me smile every once in a while. That's what I'm smiling about.
I want to go back to Mr. Ali real quick. Your video got disconnected. You want to finish your statement? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I apologize. I don't know exactly what the internet's doing here, but yeah, the point that I was just about to make about being accountable and make a schedule. We have as people, trying to teach in some way, shape, or form, either college students or even kids of the future in whatever grade they are. It's just kind of more or less told them make the schedule or follow hours, but never reinforce that they have to get, again, even the hands-on experience within the soft skills. And, making a schedule, I tell them that, even nowadays, I've become so good at making a schedule that I actually fear a schedule. I'm more accountable to that than sometimes my own boss and my own mentor, my own parents, because it keeps you structured. It keeps things organized so that you know what is expected of not only yourself to keep your own expectations high, but then other people can be reliant on you in return. And in the STEM field, that's why we're scientists. That the idea of doing science and being scientists, I even ask my students again that if they can define what science is. And it's about educating the public that aren't educated in our areas so that they can best equip themselves to handle the information and the challenges of the world that they're encompassed by. Obviously, pandemic is a great example of this right now. We had to educate the world on PPE and how that equipment made the best sense to people, and it was the scientists that needed to do that education because we're the ones in the places doing that on a daily basis. And all of that comes from the accountability and reliability that starts from these soft skills that is fostered at such a young age so that people get in the habit of doing it daily, hourly, and then through their career as they progress forward.
100% agreed, yes. Dr. Daniels or Mr. Any final comments on just the soft skills or anything that you're currently working on as far as your soft skills? Because it's a evolving process.
I actually do want to dive in really quickly, just because I noticed at the beginning of the session that so many of the questions were about learning about other careers. And I feel that a lot of what we've discussed has focused on specifically research, medicine, and engineering careers. So going along the lines of transferable skills, don't just think creatively about how you can transfer your skills, but also, think creatively about how you can transfer your skills into different types of positions. Having a STEM degree equips you with the skills to solve problems, and what your discipline is basic, the discipline. You can be a biologist or a chemist or engineer, but all that means is that that's the lens you use to evaluate problems and the approach you take to solve them. But you can do anything with them. There are people with STEM careers who do law. There are people with STEM careers who do science communication. There are people with STEM careers who do venture capital, tech transfer. I mean, there's so many things. You can do just about anything with a STEM degree. Just, it's important that you identify what you're interested in and what skills you have and leveraging them to do that thing. So don't, I know we focused on the careers that we chose, but there's so much more that you can do with a STEM degree. So I just want to highlight that. Feel free to reach out to me. I've done a lot of career exploration. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to help.
And you're, Dr. Daniels, you are on LinkedIn too, right? Just want to
Yes, I'm on
emphasize
LinkedIn.
that. Okay. Just want to keep putting it out there. Everybody's on LinkedIn. Mr. Merrick, any final comments on your soft skills or any advice? Any final advice?
Actually, going off of what Dr. Daniels was saying, as far as like soft skills, public speaking, and also just like the skills you learn in college. So like critical thinking has, done wonders for me in my career. Like I definitely didn't know a lot of the things going into my job that I'm at now, like how to run a certain assay or do certain experiments. Like they aren't things that I necessarily learned in college, but being able to critically think and how to approach new problems or how to troubleshoot equipment that doesn't work sometimes is really the most valuable thing that I gained from being in college. And those skills can take you into a lot of different fields. It doesn't have to necessarily be in medicine or in research, like Dr. Daniels was saying. And then going off of what Mr. Leeson was saying, as far as like soft skills, I'd say public speaking was the biggest one for me. I was terrified as an undergrad to talk in front of anyone, and I just did it enough to kind of conquer that fear, and it's done wonders for my career. Being able to pretty much have a conversation with my boss or someone much higher up than me, yeah, I'm going to be nervous and a little bit intimidated, but having those soft skills and being able to do that has just done wonders for me and is something that should be very highly valued.
I agree completely. Thank you all for sharing. Laura, I know we have like 1 minute left. I didn't see any questions in the chat. I'm not sure if you to um, continue on with any other questions, but I think we're at time.
Yes, we are. Can you see my screen at this time? I just wanted
Yes.
to first thank all of our esteemed panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. Just a wealth of information to tap into. And as it's been mentioned time and time again, connect with them on LinkedIn. That is our professional networking tool that I guarantee will present results in the end. Thank you so much for your time and your energy today. I have listed here in our presentation, connecting with career and employment resources. We are available to you via social media, webpage, or email, and currently enrolled students and alumni can also book appointments with our team. If you're a prospective student, we can connect you with tons of resources as well. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. I will place our survey link in the comment box here. You can click on it in the chat. We would appreciate your feedback. You are valued. Thank you for attending. And this concludes our session for National Career Development Month. Full steam ahead. Thank you all and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you to our panelists. Appreciate your input.
Thanks,
Thank you for
everyone.
having us.
Thank you.
For having me.